Hey guys, welcome back. In our last tutorial, what we did was we actually assembled half of a character in Flash, showed you how to import the Swift files and convert them to symbols, as well as get all your pivot points and everything and your character's body sprites all aligned properly. Now in this tutorial, what we're going to do is import it all into CrazyTalk Animator. So let's go up to File, and we need to export the stuff we have so far. You can see we have this mutant bear that's half finished, but we're actually going to mirror this stuff in CrazyTalk Animator and create a full character. So let's go over to File, and I'm going to go to Export, and we want to export a movie, Flash movie. So we'll just save it to the desktop. I'll call this one Bear Tutorial, and we'll save it as a Swift file, of course, and go ahead and save that. Now what I want to do is go over to CrazyTalk Animator, and in the Actor tab, let's go ahead and bring in our default actor. The same naked dummy dude right here. We'll just go ahead and bring him in, and we want to go directly into the Character Composer. So when we're in the Character Composer, the first thing I want to do is go ahead and import in our G2 Actor Design template, which is what we were editing before. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll go ahead and select our Bear Tutorial from the desktop right here. Open that up, and you can see it says to avoid overwriting your current project. If I want to keep any of these things from this current character, I can select them. But because we're actually changing the character totally, I'm not going to keep any of these settings or joint mask settings. If your character is still similar to this, this dummy character, it's really similar to that, you can maybe keep some of these, but since our character is completely different proportions and all that stuff, we'll just go ahead and press OK. Leave everything unselected. Now let's take a look at what imported. You may come up with an error log like this, depending on what your character is like. So let's click on the error log, and if you can recall from the first tutorial, we didn't have any neck, ears, or front hair, back hair. So that's why we have some unsupported tags right there. Don't worry about that, we can just move on. We'll go ahead and press close. But there is one glaring issue that we have here. Don't pay attention to the left side, by the way. We're just paying attention to the right side here. There is one glaring issue that we have, and that this hand has imported incorrectly. So you can see the hand, the bear no longer has his hand. Let's go back to Flash and see why that is. I'm going to select my hand here in Flash. And you can see it's called right hand 0. And let's just move down a little bit here. But as you can recall, if I double click on this hand, you can see that my symbol within this hand has no instance name. And this is the reason why it didn't import correctly. We need to change this one to normal. So change that name to normal, press enter, and go back out. And then we're going to export the same movie again, this time with the correct hand labeling. So let's go to Export Movie, and we'll call this one Bear Tutorial 2. Maybe instead of Beat Tutorial, we'll call it Bear Tutorial. Oh goodness, there we go. Alright, and save that. And let's go back into CrazyTalk Animator. Let's Control Z and undo that previous import. And let's try it one more time. This time we should have a successful hand import. So again, go to the Swift file here, and Bear Tutorial 2. Go ahead and open that, and we'll just press OK. And there we go, our hand has imported incorrectly. Now if you can recall, like I said, with things like the hands and the nose and the eyes, sprites that have multiple poses, you need to make the naming on the first layer correct, as well as the second layer, and the second layer also has to be a symbol. Just remember that point and you should be fine. So now let's change our mutant bear into kind of a normal looking bear. And the first thing we want to do that is actually go over here, and we want to actually select Mirror to Actor Left. And that's going to mirror all the sprites on the actor's right hand side right over to the left side, and then we should be good to go. So maybe our arms are a little bit low or our head is a little bit too high. This is a stage where we can adjust that as well. Let's select the head. Let's maybe bring it a little bit down and maybe select those arms. Left arm, we can kind of just move it up on the Z-axis. Let's move it up to about 110. And the same thing for the other right arm. Just move it up to 110 or so. And that should be just fine. And after you're satisfied with the positioning of your character, let's go over here, and you want to select Confirm Multi-Angle Settings. And it'll come up with a dialog box that says it's recalculating the sprite layers and joint masks at all other angles based on your frontal settings. So don't worry about that. We're okay for now. Just press OK. And it'll say refresh complete. let's take a look at what happened. You can see we have our bear now, and if I go to this side, it's still the old guy. So the only thing that has done is it's actually confirmed the settings on the 0 degree angle, since we haven't actually asked CrazyTalk Animator to replace the other angles yet with the same sprites. And I'm going to show you how to do that in just a moment, but there's one important step that we need to do first, and this is make sure all of the joint masks on our character are correct. So let's go ahead and select our character, and I want to go over to Scene Manager and to the Joint Mask tab. Now joint masks, you'll essentially want to put those in the same places that you had your pivot bases in Flash. And you want to make them a little bit larger just to ensure with every rotation possibility they cover that joint. So if you can recall, the one for our lower torso was actually quite large, since this guy has a pretty large belly. Let's go ahead and take that and make it a lot larger. I think something about like there would be okay. And we can stretch it out as well, since he's a little bit, he's not perfectly round. He's fairly round, but not perfectly round. And that should be just fine right there. We want to keep it just along those edges, and that should be a-okay. Let's do the same thing with the arms. Let's just kind of stretch that one out. Make sure it's covering the entire joint and then some. And that one too. That one should be fine. For joint masks, it's always a bit better to be too large than too small. So don't worry about kind of stretching these joint masks out. And I'm just kind of uniformly stretching them. And the hand will be one of the largest ones. And then we also have to take care of the face here. And what we want to do is actually just bring that down and stretch it out like that. Since our character doesn't really have a neck, we want to make sure it's all covered right here. And we'll go ahead and do those legs as well. Stretch those legs out, or rather stretch the joint masks out. He's not really stretching his legs right now. Let's move that one out as well. And the joint masks are going to mask out certain joints so they don't show up at inopportune times in your animations, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment. So once our frontal joint masks have been figured out, we need to go up to Modify, and now what I want to do is turn this guy into a multi-angle character. So let's go ahead and select that. And now a notification comes up that says it's going to apply all of this stuff to different angle profiles, bone movement, joint mask transform, all that stuff. So let's go ahead and press OK. And we should have a multi-angle character. So let's go ahead and go to 45 degrees. And you can see our character pops into that 45-degree angle. So CrazyTalk Animator has automatically created all of these different angle profiles from the limited amount of sprites you gave it. Now if you go to like 270 or 90, you can see that it's not really the best. That's because we've actually only created this character from about a handful of sprites, maybe 8 or 9 sprites. So let's go back to 0 degrees here. What I want to do first is, in the body tab, select my character's lower torso, and use the Y key here to bring it down to the axis, which is down here, just so he's kind of standing on the ground there. It's not really important to do that in this case, but if your character is way off somewhere away from the axis, when you import it in, it may import to a different area than what you originally wanted. Alright, so let's make some final adjustments to those bone positions. I think our 0 degree profile looks okay. Let's go down to the 45 degrees, and let's maybe make sure that the shoulders are a bit further over there. Maybe this one can be a little bit further in as well. And also what you want to do is you notice that the upper torso is kind of coming through the arm there, and that shouldn't be the case right here. So let's select our right arm and make sure we go up to here, and we want to send this to the front. And there you go. Now the layering is correct. And if it's a little bit jagged along here, you can see that the lower arm and the hand are a little bit jagged compared to the upper arm there. We can just select this and maybe stretch them together. And there you go. Click out of there. And that looks a lot smoother than this one over here. So let's do the same thing to this side. Let's maybe stretch it out a little bit like that. And that should be a lot smoother than before. So I think our 45-degree angle is done. Let's go down to this 315-degree angle, do the same thing. Maybe just move it over a little bit. Move that bone over a little bit. Select this upper arm again. We want to make sure that it's sent to the front. And you can also do the same thing with the legs. Almost forgot about the legs there. Let's move those thighs over. Maybe we can even send this one to the front as well. And then we'll go back over to 45 degrees here. We can send this thigh to the front if we want, and move it over slightly. Make sure we don't move it too far down. And that should be okay there. That's kind of simulating, you know, the 45-degree angle and the all the other angles as well. That you can also make sure that the joint masks are okay. I think our joint masks on this side should be okay as well, since all that data was taken from the when we confirmed the multi-angle settings there and created the multiple angle character. So let's go back to 0 degrees, and I think we should be okay to import this character back into the stage. So let's go back to stage right here, and you can see there's our character looking handsome as ever. So let's zoom in a little bit on him, and let's try and apply an animation to him. So select the character, let's go to our content manager, maybe animations. Let's try and apply a 3D motion to him, maybe the dancing motion here. Let's try this gymnastics motion right here. So you can see we had a nice stretch right there, and everything looks fairly good. We may have a little bit of a layer issue with the hands going through the lower torso here, but that's easily fixable. You can see right here, if we go back to frame 1, let's just go ahead down to our layer editor, select that hand, and maybe send it to the back of the lower torso, and that looks good from frame 1. If it goes up here, that's okay. Maybe back about here is where we want to have it go in front of the lower torso. So about here, let's open up our timeline. I'll show you what I'm doing here. Press F3, and you can see we have our 2D motion track editing, 2D motion track open in the layer track right here. Right here is, before that is where we want the hand to go in front of the lower torso. So select that hand and send it to the front of the lower torso, and that should be fine. You can see it adds a little keyframe right there. And now the hand is going in front of the lower torso, but still behind the upper torso. So you can select that hand again right here and move it in front of the upper torso as well. And then we shouldn't have that problem. Well, if we do still have that problem, then there's one more thing we can do actually, and that is 3D motion key editing. So let's quickly open up our 3D motion key track right here, and I'm going to actually double click in this 3D motion layer track right here, and what that's going to do is bring up our 3D motion key editor on the side. Now let's take a look at the dummy and the actual position. Sometimes CrazyTalk Animator might have some difficulty with the layer order versus the actual physical position of the hand in 3D space here. So you can see that the hand is fairly, far back. So let's take a look at the motion as we scrub along here. And right here, it's kind of going behind. You can see as the hand moves back, it's kind of going behind the upper torso right there. So at this point, let's go ahead and start add a keyframe at this frame right here by double clicking. That's going to add a keyframe. So I think it was about frame 70, where we're at the extent of our reach into our own torso right there. We'll select the hand on the character. We'll just try and move that forward, see what happens. And there we go, and problem solved. So let's take a look at the entire process. Oh, maybe it needs to be a little bit more forward. And let's take a look. Okay, that looks just fine and dandy. And then here we can kind of return it to normal. Any point over here, we can just reset it, and that'll reset it back to the original position that is in the clip. So let's go ahead and play back this whole thing. I'm just going to close down the timeline there, and there we go. Now, of course, the right hand is having a similar issue with the big fat stomach and the positioning of the hand, but the way to solve that is essentially the same as the left-hand side. And again, here we're going to have to make sure that this layer is behind the lower torso. So just one more quick adjustment for the left-hand side. We'll go to the layer editor rather, select that hand, and make sure it is behind our lower torso from that point onwards, and it should be just fine. There we go. All right, so there we go. There's our finished product right there, and we can also move that over to 45 degrees. So let's try one more time at 45 degrees. So bring the layer editor down. I'm going to use the left bracket key to rotate this guy to 45. And here, let's take a look at what the initial motion looks like here. everything looks fairly decent. We may have an issue with the hand and the upper thigh right there, rather the thigh. So maybe that could be fixed if we just go into our layers, change our left hand. In this case, we want the left hand to move to the top probably, so that'll be just fine. And let's see what happens here. Alright, there we go. So that's basically it. That's how you can, take 8 or 9 sprites, 8 or 9 symbols in Flash, assemble a whole character, and you can have characters that are, compatible with animations from 0, 45, and 315 degrees, from either side. And that's essentially the simplest way you're going to get a character from Flash into CrazyTalk Animator. Now the functionality is limited. Like I mentioned, it can only do the the forward 3 angle profiles, motions from those forward 3 angle profiles, and still look normal. But in the next tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can copy the stuff from the 0 angle degree profile to the 180 degree profile, and then import in a fully angled A character that has been fully replaced. Every single angle profile has been replaced. And the procedure is a little bit different. And then we'll also have a tutorial specifically for creating and assembling eyes. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you learned something from this tutorial and you can create your own characters from Flash.